Every good and perfect gift comes from God, comes from above, the Father of light. It's like when we count blessings, when we recognize life itself is a gift, it does something to us, it does something to me. I feel when I sense and when I count blessings, my heart enlarges, it becomes bigger. And that is a movement to me, what we are to be about. Just count the blessings, open up and feel your heart widening and recognizing that life itself and so many precious gifts are around us, and not to take them for granted. And I know of people who do gratitude journals just in the morning. What are 2 things you're grateful for? In the evening, just stop over a meal and recognize the farmers, the growth, the wind, the air, the sun, the rain that it took for the food to grow, everyone who had a piece in one part in it to make it to your plate. It's coming alive, and I think that's the invitation for us from James. Just be aware, open, wondering. It's not just whatever, it's wow. Grateful for that and grateful for our community. There is this South African word Ubuntu. You may have heard it. It's what Nelson Mandela, in a beautiful way, describes. I am because we are. We're not just individuals. We don't just happen independently. We are because a community, a family, we sustain, we support each other, we lift each other up. We're together in it. We're mutually connected, interdependent, doing that. So that's the gift of God that opens us up and that moves us. Now, some people may say, well, you can talk about all the gifts in the world and all the beauty and all. What about the hardships? What about the challenges? Well, I invite you to think back. Was there a time when you faced a challenge, a huge challenge, and you had no idea if there could anything good come from it? And in hindsight, something did come from it. I'll give you an example. Sigrid and I, we always had this vision of experiencing church in a different culture, in a different land. Living in Germany with 2 little kids, we packed up to come to Virginia to a church as an exchange, ecumenical exchange, and it was like, wow, beautiful experience. I was associate, we returned to Germany. The senior pastor retired with whom I ministered together, and then the congregation called us back. Well, coming back as the one being responsible for all was very different than being an associate who was kind of... And then there came the United Church of Christ, the national setting coming in with marriage equality. And there were some interesting dynamics going on in the congregation that I had no idea about. So it was like, whoa, what did we get into here? That's why I have so little hair left. I pulled it all out. Yeah. What a huge challenge for us at that time. And I don't wish it on anyone in the sense of challenges as they are in life. We never hope and pray it won't happen to anyone. But looking back, I have grown, I've learned, there has been some good coming from that. I'm not who I am today without that challenging experience. Now, be careful. I always say be careful to tell someone else, well, something good will come from that. That's abusive, that's not okay. But I think what is legit is for us to look back at our lives and think of, what did that do for me? Or how did I grow from that? Or how did that help me? Or did it? It may not have. But it's not for me to tell you, well, you will thank me later for that. Or whatever way we can do that. Yeah. So the second thing is, so strongly in our passage, the letter to James, of James overall is, be doers of the work and not just a word, and not just listeners. I love the idea of that it takes both. It takes prayer and actions. And it's an old wisdom of the Benedictine spirituality. In Latin, ora and labora. So it's like pray as if everything depends on God, for it really does. And work as if everything depends on you, for it really does. It takes both. It takes our wholehearted connection to God's Spirit, to God's energy in us and among us. And it takes our rolled up sleeves, our muscle, our energy to make it happen. It's not just one. And that's the invitation, I think, where James reminds us, you may have all the faith in the world. If you don't put it to work, it's not happening on its own, does it? So the invitation as we move into our program year, how does your faith show practically in your actions? How do you translate your faith into actions? And when Jesus is asked, well, how shall we know? Because we hear so many people talk about faith and belief and this and that. How shall we know who the true people are? And Jesus said, it's just like with a tree or a shrub or with veggies. Look at the fruits. If the tree bears good fruit, good person. If it's rotten, the tree is not good. And when we look at Galatians, what are the fruit of the Spirit? What is that fruit? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. Gentleness, generosity, faithfulness, self-control. You know when you see a person what they do, what they're made of, from where it's coming. And when it's not all about them, what's in it for me, but when they're doing it for the right reasons. And then, to me, it's really about finding the right balance in between the prayerful, the reorientation, the being connected with God, and the actual doing and showing up. To me, faith is like, who is showing up at Loaves and Fishes? Who is writing cards to people who are homebound? Who are the people who visit homebound people? What is the hands-on? And what ministries, what missions do you support? Not just at St. Paul's, but beyond the organizations, with time, talent, treasures. What organizations do you support financially, for example, makes a difference. It tells what you're made of, what you believe in, what your faith is about, what you value, how you want to see this world become a better place. So, James sums up this passage and says, true religion is to have compassion, to care for the orphans and the widows. Now, why orphans and widows? Orphans and widows in those times were the ones who were just down on their luck. There was no social system, no social services to help them up. If the bread earner of the family was gone, was dead, you were at the mercy of life. You were really down. So that's why orphans and widows are mentioned over and over again in the Bible, in the Old Testament and in the New, as symbol, as expression of those who are really down, who are struggling. Now, orphans and widows, in today's language, it may be like foreigners, strangers, people struggling, people who come for loaves and fishes. You can add your own words. And James says true religion is to have compassion for those who are down on their luck. Compassion. What is that? It's like having a heart. Many, many encounters where Jesus is really encountering people it describes in the Bible. Jesus sees the widow carrying out her son who died, the sole provider. And it says Jesus had compassion. Jesus had a heart. The Good Samaritan, why does he stop? It says he had compassion. He had a heart. When Jesus sees a leper, the one who was not just sick, but he was cast out to live outside, beyond society, Jesus had compassion. When Jesus sees the crowd, the hungry people, the 5,000 plus people, it says he had compassion. Jesus' whole ministry, his whole way of being in the world, one big aspect, one big thing is that got him into action. What was it? He had a heart. He had compassion. Actions. How does your faith show through your actions? Not just through your words, because words can be cheap. Lots of hot air. There are people, they're so heavenly minded, they're not good for any earthly matters. How does your faith translate into actions? How do your actions speak? What is your faith made of?